doing on your behalf in the year 2022 and what we've delivered. So I'm going to talk a little bit just to remind you about our overall strategy and place this release in the context of the releases that we have delivered and will continue to deliver, and give you an update on our Enterprise Command Center capabilities, our overall approach to customer-voted enhancements, and then we'll spend most of the time on the individual product family highlights to talk about what we've done in each of the functional areas, and then a little bit on the technology highlights that we've done that apply to everything in eBusiness Suite, and then point you some places where you get more information. So let's go back to our overall EBS strategy and roadmap. So what we have now at the end of 2022 is the 12.2.12 release, which, as you can see, is a pattern that's been going back almost 10 years now of delivering every year an update to the 12.2 version of eBusiness Suite. And since 2018, we've also been delivering every 6 months an update to our enterprise command centers, which go alongside these releases, but you could use the latest enterprise command centers, for example, even if you were still on 12.2.5. So they come out together, but they are decoupled in a way that you don't have to bring your whole system up to 12.2.12 to take advantage of the latest capabilities we have on enterprise command centers. Now, just a word on our support situation. We have been maintaining a rolling 10-year commitment to Premier Support with eBusiness Suite. We recently, in 2022, updated that to say we're committed to Premier Support through the end of 2033. So we can expect an update to that early in 2023 that would be to 2034. So basically at all points, we just want to make sure that if we ever were to end Premier Support for eBusiness Suite, you would have at least 10 years notice. But that's not to imply that 2033 is really the date when we actually intend to do that. Now, we always categorize our innovation into broad categories of user experience improvement, functionality, and operational efficiency, and we'll be doing that again today as we go through the discussion. So let's talk just a little bit just to reframe what enterprise command centers are. I think many of you who've been following what we've been doing in recent years are aware of this, but just for everybody's benefit, the idea is to replace the sort of home pages of the eBusiness Suite applications with what are in effect BI dashboards. Basically, you start with charts and graphs and key indicators and filter mechanisms that you can use to identify the important transactions for you as an end user to work on. They're present right here in the screen, and when you find one that you want to go to, you can navigate to it in context to the transaction screen, take action that's appropriate, and then come back to the dashboard to review the additional work you want to do. The idea is really to both give the user a more flexible way to get to transactions that are important given their role, and also to decrease the maintenance burden of a lot of custom operational reporting that you might have around, which invoices are late, which orders are stuck, which shipments are delayed, or whatever it might be. You don't have to do that separately as reports if you have this kind of dashboarding embedded in the system. We're now up to 34 of these command centers, which are really groupings of dashboards. Each command center has, one or more dashboards. So we have over 135 dashboards at this point. So really across the entire eBusiness Suite. In April of 2022, we added bills of material, and then in the latest release, the one that has come out here in November, we're adding general ledger, which is a very important addition to the enterprise command centers. I'll show you actually a couple of flows through that so you can understand what we did there. But that really kind of completes in a lot of ways the coverage. We'll continue to add new capabilities to these as we go forward, but general ledger is one of the ones people really were missing and asked us to do, so we've now done that. So as I said, 2 new command centers. In addition to that, across 2022, we have 6 new dashboards and 7 track and trace dashboards that use our network diagram that we've created. And we've also introduced framework enhancements to improve the timeline viewer. We actually introduced that the last time earlier in 2022, and now we've made more use of it and made some additional improvements to it. So a lot of investment really in all the different aspects of improving enterprise command centers. And as we go through the session today, I'm going to just mention the things that we did in in April because they're part of the 2022 story. But I'm going to demonstrate just with short little walkthroughs some of the things we've added most recently in the November release. There is another video where we do demonstrations of all of the things that we added in 2022 in Enterprise Command Centers. I mean, in April 2022 in Enterprise Command Centers. So you can go back and look at that video if you want to see more detail around the things I mentioned that came out last April. Okay, in addition to Enterprise Command Centers, we have one of the other things we do to decide what to work on any business suite is look at the customer voted enhancements. So we have a number of support communities that are maintained on MyOracle support. We have over 20,000 users who've engaged in that process. Thousands of ideas have been submitted. We have customers can vote on each other's ideas, and it's actually a very effective screening mechanism because it turns out only about 3% of the ideas that are introduced actually get 20 different independent customer organizations voting for them. And about another 5% have between 10 and 19. So that gives us a really good sense of what a lot of organizations agree would benefit from benefit if we did it. So at this point, we've delivered overall over 700 of these enhancements, including 38% of the ones that had the highest score, the 3% of the ones that got 20 votes. So we actually quite a bit of focus on that. A number of those that have been done in this release and are highlighted are shown here. A lot of things really related to inventory. So gives you a sense that something that got a 44 score, means that that there's 40 customers that voted for that and so forth. So it gives you a sense of what the popularity of some of these enhancements is, including things like canceling in-transit shipment. I'll show you that later, but that's one that's many customers have asked for and we've now done. Okay, so let's get into the meat and talk about specifically what have we built. So we're going to go around the wheel here and talk about the individual product areas kind of one at a time. So let's start with the General Ledger Command Center because that's brand new and it applies to almost all of our customers. So just to orient you about what this is about, if you start on the left, you have source transactions, things like AP invoices or receivables invoices. We have existing command centers that help you identify issues with the things that are stuck or what business transactions you want to do around those subledger entries. Now, once you've done the transactions, there's a flow that goes through subledger accounting and then into general ledger. And previously, we have built capability around the subledger accounting processing phase. So transactions come in, and then you run a process called create accounting, which actually creates the debits and credits based on rules for those transactions. And then you review those to make sure you're comfortable with the planned accounting treatments that the system has produced. And then from there, you transfer them over to general ledger and go through journal import and then posting. So what we've delivered in the past was a period close dashboard that helped you identify and work on things that were in the system but hadn't had create and accounting run on them, kind of make sure they're ready. Things that were when create accounting ran, there were things that were invalid or there were flagged accounting errors, and ultimately review steps you could do to make sure that the accounting appeared to be correct. So we've given you some of those kind of period close exception processing related dashboards in the past. And what we've introduced now is a GL command center that actually helps you identify what it is you need to import and whether you had import errors. And then finally, when you actually do get things into GL, whether you've before or after you've posted, you can look at account balances and drill down to make sure they seem right. That's kind of your last checkpoint before you finally posted things into general ledger. So let's give you, this is the sense of a list of some of the capabilities you have in terms of doing account analysis and looking down into subledger details, but I'll actually jump ahead and show you what this looks like. We'll work through a couple of simple scenarios just to build your intuition about what this could do for you. So we're first going to look at a situation where you have an account record or account balance that seems unusual and you want to figure out what's going on. You have some unposted journals here and you want to kind of get to the bottom of it. So here's your, for the particular GL period you have, here's some revenue and expense lines, and your expense line seems high. As you look at it, you say that's higher than I expected. So what's going on here? So let's drill down on expenses. And in particular, here's the categories of expenses. And you say, well, let's look at these employee expenses and see what's going on with those. So you click down and drill further down into employee expenses. And here you see something that's obviously anomalous, right? You have a situation where the meals expense is bigger than airfare and car rental and other things you would expect to be higher in terms of regular employee expense reports. So now that you found that's likely to be your problem, you click on that. And now you can break these down by, you say, well, which area is this happening in? Like, where is that meals expense coming from? So here you can actually open up this window and add an additional segment out of your chart of accounts that you might want us to group by. So we so far hadn't really been grouping these by individual department, but now that we're trying to find these meals expenses, let's break out and see which department accounts for that. So when we do that, we see the breakout now by department down at the bottom. See, there's consulting and maintenance, marketing, and so we can see that the marketing expense around meals is where the problem seems to be. So let's drill down from there into more details. And now you can see this rendered on a nice network diagram where you can see the source and the journals that came from that, and now the individual debits and credits that are responsible for that balance. So that one that looks like a $4,800 meal report, $4,850 meal report, that looks like that's the problem. Let's look at that and see what's going on with that. And from here, you can actually drill down to the subledger journal. So you can see this is the place where we have got the item expense for $4,850 in this journal line. And now you can go from here, drill across to this case, the AP invoice workbench. Now you're back in the payables to see what was the line that came from. And you can see that there's an entry for $3,950 for customer event catering. So basically somebody put somebody from the marketing group put a customer catering expense onto their personal expense report. So when you look at that, you say, okay, that is, probably not, fraudulent, but it's not the correct accounting. We actually have a different account we would normally use for, catering for promotional events. And so you can go back and share this with the expense manager to say, let's get this recategorized into the proper account, and then we can send it back through again. So you're able to drill down from just something suspicious at a very high level all the way down to the individual invoice line that is causing your problem, and then with that insight you can make sure it's corrected. So I worked through another simple example that's kind of along the same lines. Let's suppose you're drilling down into expenses again, and this time let's look at the purchase invoices. Okay, see if that's the highest category we have so far in this period. And here, if you're looking at these, you say, okay, these are our purchase orders, and we have a big tens of thousands of dollar maintenance expense. You think, well, that is unusual. Let's look and just make sure the accounting treatment of that is correct. So here, you, just like the last time, you drill down into the account details. You go through and you see this network diagram. You see there's an individual $30,000 line that's expensed. You think, okay, a $30,000 expense seems high, but it could be okay. Let's see what it is. So you drill down again into the subledger. You drill down to view the transaction. And you can see here that on a purchase order line, somebody has bought a new motor for a packaging machine. Okay, now if that's a repair, that could be the correct accounting treatment. But if that's a better motor, like a higher horsepower motor or something that's going to have a longer life than the motor that it replaced, it should actually be capitalized and treated as an asset. So you have the information you need to work with the maintenance manager to determine which is the case. And if it turned out that it actually should be treated as an asset and depreciated rather than expensed, you can capitalize that. So the change would actually be made by ticking the track as asset box, and that'll cause that to get set up in the fixed asset system and depreciated. So again, situations where you're looking around for general ledger balances that maybe you want to investigate further, and you can very easily get to the underlying subledger line detail that's responsible. And if you're the right user to do it, you can fix it right there. Otherwise, you can work with the person that owns that business area to get it adjusted for the correct accounting treatment. Okay, so that was a good example of the Enterprise Command Center. So just once again, that's available to anybody running 1224 or higher. If you just get this General Ledger Command Center from our latest delivery, you can use it with any of those earlier releases of EBS. Nothing to buy, just download it, configure it, turn it on, and go. So transitioning on now beyond General Ledger, one of the other things we did in the financials area in Property Manager is to deal with better versioning support for leases. So if leases get revised, you can see the current versions, you can see prior versions. If you're actually amending a lease, you can simulate what the amortization schedule is going to be under the new lease amendment to make sure that you understand the financial aspect of what you're doing. And you can manage approvals like that now that we've integrated that with the Approval Management Engine, or AME. So shifting gears to projects and procurement, most of the energy in this area in the last year has been focused on a project we've been doing for the U.S. federal government. Actually, most of the U.S. federal government runs financials on eBusiness Suite, and over 70 agencies now, as they've transitioned into the fiscal year that began the beginning of October 2022, all those federal agencies that perform work for each other or buy or purchase work or services from some other government agency, one performing work for the other and essentially getting paid for it. Everybody doing that in effective October 2022 has to be using what's called the G-invoicing system. And what that is in the government is a central repository for terms and conditions, as well of agreements, and the orders that one group has, what's called the requesting agency, has placed with the servicing agency to do that work, and then how much, where we are with the project, basically what's the performance that's been accomplished under that contract or under that order, and then the settlement requests that have been made, basically the requests for payment that have been made. So because there's a common view of that now, all of the, it'll be much easier for the government to reconcile all this auditing, because everyone will have a common view of what the progress is, what the terms are, what requests for payments have been made, and so forth. So it improves finances for the US government. It's also, though, meant that we had to add a lot of capability to integrate with this G-invoicing system and to support this. And we've done that over the last year. And now all of the 4 shared services centers that we have in the U.S. government that run EBS on the other agencies use in a shared service mode, as well as a number of the agencies that independently run EBS, now have adopted this system and are now transacting this way. So it's been a huge lift for the massive number of U.S. government implementations that we have. And it's really for the broader audience that isn't a U.S. government entity. What you should appreciate about this is the scale of the investment that's required and the kind of customer that we're investing for. It's like we're investing for making U.S. federal government accounting work better. Just tells you a lot about the scale and longevity of what we're doing in eBusiness Suite. So switching gears now to the logistics side with the Inventory Management Command Center, we've actually done an enormous amount of work in inventory over the last year. In the earlier in 2022 release, we added a lot of track and trace capabilities to identify the root cause of quality problems. If you made a shipment and made several shipments and there was a problem, you could actually get back to like what during the handling process might have been responsible for the problem, and many other use cases. What we're going to talk about today is a new capability around the expansion we've made around labor management. And I'll cover another capability we've added shortly around physical inventory. So let's focus on this labor management capability. So the scenario here is that you are managing the warehouse, and up until 12.2.12 and this version of Enterprise Command Centers here, what you had visibility to is the work that was the work hours that were going to be required for all of the shipping lines that have been released for picking. So, you know, things are released, and at that point they become part of your work hour demand, and you could plan your work activities around that. What we've added in 12.2.12 is essentially added the visibility to booked order lines, not just released lines, meaning we've got the order. We haven't released the order for picking yet, but you can use that information to plan your picking, your work schedule, your picking schedule within the warehouse. And so I'll show you how that could be important, how you get value out of that. So let's assume that we are starting out by, you know, we have 2 hours to go in the day in the warehouse. If you look at the pending workload, we have 20 hours. Let's say we have 2 hours to go. We have 20 workers. So we have 40 hours worth of capacity, labor capacity that we can apply. And so far we have 20 hours, 20.65 hours of work that you know, those people could be assigned to do, and that's based on picked or things have been released for picking. Okay, so you say, well, we have some capacity here. How could we utilize that? So what we're going to do is eliminate the filter at the top that says shipping date range is today. We're going to actually look at future orders, things where the shipping date is in the future. And one of the things that we find is that, you know, you don't typically want to pick an order that's not going to ship for several days and go through the process of getting it ready to ship. But for certain things like export orders, there can be a reason to do that, because you might have the paperwork associated with those orders. You might have to send through customs clearance or something that you know, requires some lead time. So actually, maybe you do want to pick and completely prepare the orders, some of your export orders. So we could work on those today, even though they don't need to ship for several days. So what you could do is go over to the left here. It's a new feature in ECC. You can click exclude. So we can just exclude the current, like if you're based in the US, you just exclude the US as the destination for the orders. And you pick up all the export orders just for that one operation. So let's do that. And now we see that of the export orders, there are 28 hours. If you look at the key indicator there, it says there's 28 hours of workload. Well, we have about 20 hours to work with. Maybe a little bit under that that's free. So what should we do? Which work should we go with? And what you could do down in the chart there is look and see, well, we actually have 2 export orders and you can see the amount of time required. One of them is just under 20, and the other one is on top of that is about 8 hours. So since given the capacity situation we have, we could actually select that order that takes just under 20, and that will fit within the labor capacity we have to work on today. So when we do that, then all the picking lines associated with that show up, and we can select all of those and go over to the shipping workbench. And from here, they're all carried over, and we could just click launch pick release. And that'll allow us to create to release that so that the picking activities can pick that up and operate on it today with the available capacity. So that just, you know, is a more flexibility in being able to manage your warehouse optimally. Now, the next thing I want to talk about in inventory is the physical inventory process. So this is where you periodically kind of stop what you're doing and go visit like all of your inventory locators, all your inventory locations, and count what's actually there. Now we have this concept called tags. A tag is the amount of an item in a locator. So you might have a locator like a shelf or a bin that has multiple different items in it, and you might have an item that's located in multiple different bins. but the intersection of an item and a locator, the amount of a particular item in a bin, is what we call a tag. So you're going to go count the tags, and you count how your process is going, because you know how many tags you have to visit, and you can count how many have been completed. So the two things we're going to look at here are, so we manage this physical inventory, we're going to start with counted, and the top row shows us the counted and uncounted tags. And that's a way to determine, how far you are through the picking process. So in this case, we've counted 12 tags, and we've got 2,350 uncounted tags. So we're just getting started. But then the other part is adjustments. So when you count the tags and you find you don't have as much as the system thought you had at that location, then one of the inventory reservations you have that might have assumed that was the original planned amount was there, may be invalid because the reserved material isn't actually there. So you have to make adjustments to what's in the tag, and because of the adjustments, there can be impacts to pending reservations. So let's kind of work through that and see what that looks like. So let's start off with our counted tags. We're going to see if we have adjust. So it turns out we do have an adjustment that affects a pending reservation. And so let's identify what's going on with that. So just click on that. And what you see is at the bottom row there, we have a system quantity of 13 and adjustment quantity of -8. That means that we were supposed to find 13 of this item in the tag, and we actually only found 5. So we're short by 8. So the problem we have is that we actually had inventory reservations for this item that added up to more than the 5 that we found. So we have to decide what to do about that. So you go over to click here, and you go link over to the reservations area. And what you find is that if you look at the reservation quantity, about 2/3 of the way across to the right, you see that we actually have 2 orders. One of them needs only 1 of these, and the other needs 5. Now we have 5, which is less than the 6 we need. So we have to figure out how to sort of short one of these by 1. And you might say, well, one of those orders is for 5, and we have 5, so let's just ship that one. But actually, if you go all the way over to the right and you look at the need by date, the order for 1 is actually needed almost a month sooner than the order for the 5. So in all likelihood, we should ship the 1 and then adjust the reservation for the 5 to show that we don't have enough inventory for that one, but we've got several weeks to remediate that situation. So let's go ahead and make that adjustment. So what you could do is you could select the later reservation and say we're going to adjust that one down to show we don't have 5, we only have 4. And so what you do here is it takes you to the update reservation screen, and it says even though you have 5 on hand, you're going to say 4 is the quantity that I'm going to allocate and reserve for this, which is going to make this show as to get flagged as something that has unreserved demand, meaning you needed 5 and you don't have enough. And we can deal with that later on when we get more of this inventory in stock. Okay, now that's what you might be doing while the physical inventory is going on. Now, at the end of that whole process, as you were adjusting these individual reservations, you may have some imbalances. You basically come to the end of that process and you look back up at this higher level of the reservations dashboard. Now, we've had this for a couple of years now, but it kind of links into this process. So after that physical inventory is over, you go back and say, okay, for the next day, do I have all the unreserved, do I have all the demand I need reserved? Just because this is by date. So the first day, yes, we're good. For the next day, yes, we're good. So the first 2 days, we don't have any reservations that have unmet demand. And when you get to the 3rd day out, we actually do have some unreserved demand, meaning reservations that we're not going to be able to fulfill. So you can click on the unreserved demand here and go across and look for the items that might be in that unreserved demand. And you can click on one of those. And when you do, you can see all the customers for whom you have the unreserved demand. And you can say, should I allocate it to, a customer where I have penalties if I don't ship on time, or my, best customer, or whatever, rules you want to apply to determine who should get the scarce inventory that you have. So it all kind of links together. We kind of saw 3 things. One is a way to maintain the actual counting process, so you can figure out that you're going to end the count process on time, keep track of the completed tags. Second, that as you make these inventory adjustments and as you go, make some adjustments to the reservations that are impacted. That's kind of the micro adjustment and reservation adjustment process. And then in the end, after it's all done, you kind of come back and look at the macro. You know, how long do I have before I have a problem with unreserved demand? Which customers are going to be impacted? You kind of handle this at a larger scale level when you kind of get done with that physical adjustment. And it didn't mention one of the neat new features we have also is the ability to sort of lock movement transactions, so that when you start the physical inventory, it actually prevents any material movement type transactions from being entered, because you don't want things being moved out from under your counting. So that whole thing together is like a much better management of the physical inventory process than we've ever been able to offer before. Okay, shifting gears to order management. In the April release, we provided a command center dashboard that helps you analyze why you're getting returns. And again, if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go back and look at the demo run through we did back in April. What we've added this time is better flows around internal sales orders. Now, we did some of this last time, and we do more of it this time. This is what we've added specifically, is the ability to model the return flow, the state of the flow as in transit, and actually even to cancel an in-transit order. So what do I mean by that? Org A bought something from Org B. Org B is going to ship them the goods, and when we're going to so when they ship the goods, something might go wrong. You might have shipped the wrong goods, or you might get stuck in customs, or you might have some other reason to sort of undo that. So for things that are more than just move it, kind of from one place to another within a plant or a distribution facility, you're really shipping this distances. You could get situations where the goods you shipped, missed the boat, or some had some kind of problem like that, and you just want to receive them back. So what we had in 12.2.11 and earlier was the ability to get those all the way to the destination and then have them returned. If you didn't, if like Org A got the goods and they weren't the right thing, then Org A could receive them and turn around and ship them back as a return. What we have now is the ability to essentially cancel goods when they're in transit. We shipped it, it missed the boat, now we're just going to take it back. And so we handle the accounting and to be able to receive that material back into inventory. Another cool thing we have in that comes up a lot, that's a very popular customer-driven enhancement, is handling of consigned inventory. So there are a number of cases. What do you mean by consigned inventory? That means you hold the inventory, but the supplier still owns it. So it's not actually your property. There wasn't a purchase transaction that's happened yet, but the material's in your logistics system. You're keeping track of where it is. So where does that come up? Sometimes that comes up with distributors. So it may be that they own material, but it's positioned with retailers. It could be with manufacturers who own material that is positioned with distributors and retailers. For example, a tire manufacturer may work on a consignment basis where they provide tires into a distribution center. Those go out when they're called for to individual tire stores, and when the customer actually buys the tires, that actually is the time when the store buys the tires from the manufacturer. So the store doesn't carry like the cost of the inventory of countless tires that they have to sit around and wait for somebody to want to buy. So in those kind of situations, what we haven't been able to handle well is where that consigned inventory moves around from one place to another within the customer organization. So let's suppose you receive those tires into your distribution center, and then you push some of them out to an individual service station. So you're just moving the consigned materials. Now, before you couldn't do that without essentially completing the purchase transaction or the financial transaction to take ownership of those tires, which isn't the business model you want. You wanted them to still stay owned by the supplier. You just moved them from one location to another, one distribution facility, or from a distributor through to a retailer type of thing. So now we support that. So you can actually move supplier-owned materials from one customer inventory organization to another, and the sales process, the actual purchase, change of ownership doesn't occur until there's material consumption, which could be into another product like a manufacturing work order, or it could be to an end customer sale, or it could be to a point where you're doing this with spares. And when the service is actually done, then the ownership goes from the supplier of the components to the person who received the service, but without the intervening servicer organization actually taking ownership of it. So a lot more flexibility around that now. Again, something very commonly requested. Another thing that's commonly requested is better archive and purge. And we've actually delivered that now here in the context of order management, which is one of the most important cases people care about. So here are the ideas that we can actually move orders out of the order management transaction tables into a different set of archival tables in the same system. And from there, you can either purge them out of the system completely, or you could retrieve them. So for people who have very high order processing volumes where you want to manage the sizes of the actual transactional order management tables down, this archive is a convenient way to store off closed orders that you don't expect to transact on again, but still have them around. So if you needed to restore them for some reason, that you could and initiate a transaction. So that is a very commonly requested new capability that we have added on your behalf in 12.2.12. So turning now to the kind of the costing and manufacturing areas, we had a huge release in this early in 2022. Back in the April release, we added a command center around analyzing profit margins by product line, profitability by product. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and look at the April 2022 demos and video for that. We also introduced a bill of materials command center where you could manage changes to the bill of material and visualize sort of the before and after picture of changes to your bill of materials using the network graph. We created a track and trace genealogy so you could understand the root cause of a quality problem in process manufacturing, similarly in outsourced manufacturing, and similarly with the quality system if you want to understand get the bottom of root cause defects. So we actually did quite a lot in the earlier 2022 release of Enterprise Command Centers around all of those issues. We introduced a project manufacturing command center in that case, but we've actually enhanced it considerably now with a better timeline support that we've added now in the latest Enterprise Command Center update. So I'll run through that demo for you just so you get a sense of what kind of the whole flow looks like, just to remind you of the kind of things we've done in all those areas, as well as to show you the latest timeline capabilities. So let's do that. Let's investigate a problem where we're going to slip a schedule on our project manufacturing and how we get back on track. So what this is your dashboard here, and you're looking to say you're making engines. This could be like an aerospace and defense type scenario. You're making engines, maybe you're even making airplanes, and you say, okay, we have a work order exception. Let's go see what there's one. You can see from the legend that this is there's one is with this Engines 3000 project, and then down on the list you can see that's the one that shows the work order exception, and we have it shows that we're 2 days late. So let's click on the network graph and see what's going on there. So here's the sales order for Department of Defense, and it goes back through this work order. And you see the work order is highlighted in yellow there, and it has a little yellow triangle in it. And that work order is relying on components. And actually it flags which of the components you have a problem with, in this case, fuel pumps. And there's a little triangle in that one. So I think just from looking at the diagram, you can see that's the thing you want to get to the bottom of. So let's look at the detail behind that. So we're going to show details there. And the reason we have a problem is that the completing this order requires that we have 5 of these pumps, and we've only issued 2. So we're short 3. The open quantity is 3. So we can't fulfill this order because we're short 3 fuel pumps. So let's highlight the path to understand, what all is involved in that and where the problem might be. And when we do that, we see that we go back to, you see the purchase order that it came from, and you can see that particular purchase order. Let's see what's going on with that. And we view that on the timeline. And when we view that, what you see, this is the purchase order on the left. If you see the bottom row there, it's that we need that by November 15th. That's when we said we needed that when we made the purchase order. And the sales order is requested by November 20th. Okay, so the customer wants the finished product by November 20th. We said we need the material by November 15th so we can do 2 days of activity on it and ship it as a sales order. If you look over to the right side, what's happened is that the promise date for the purchase order is now November 28th. So our vendor slipped. Our vendor's 13 days late on this purchase order. And because of that, the work order can't start until the 30th. It won't complete till December 2nd. We can't ship until December 5th. And so we have slipped the sales order because the customer needed it on November 20th. Now this purchase order slip is translated into a sales order slip out to the 5th of December. So this is, you see those are flagged as problematic with the little alert signs. Okay, so what we ask now is, I wonder, do we have any of these parts, any of these fuel pumps in inventory for other projects that maybe have less of a critical need for them? Because then we can borrow them from those other projects and get ourselves back on track. So how do we deal with that? We go back to the component and we view the project inventory. And now we see that there are 2 other projects that do have on-hand inventory for these fuel pumps. So, and we can see, both of those. So what we want to do is figure out let's look at the work orders that are associated with these to just see what their schedule is. And when we do that, the one that we needed, remember, engines 3000, that's in the middle. That's the scheduling of this work order as it currently stands. But there's a work order to the left, which is needed even sooner. And that's for the project called engines 2000. Okay, so we don't want to borrow from that one because they need it even sooner than we do. And then there's another one that's actually like 2 months out, or even almost 3 months out, which is at the end of January. The engines 5000 project has these fuel pumps in inventory. So we can borrow from that. And then then our purchase order, when it comes in, will be in plenty of time to replenish what we borrow. So that's the thing we want to do. We want to transfer 3 fuel pumps from the 5000 project back to our 3000 project and get ourselves back on track. So how do we do that? We go over and initiate what's called a borrow and payback or transfer transaction. So right up here from the command center, you can click on that. And it takes us to the screen where we can go from the engines 5000 locator to where those things are stored and put those over in the engines 3000 locator, which is where we need them to be. And the quantity is 3. So once we commit that, we can go bring the network diagram back up. And now actually there's 2 different purchase orders that make up our supply of components, one from what it used to be and the other one from the borrow that just happened. And when we look back at the timeline, what we see is that we're back on track. So the late purchase order is still sitting out there at the end of November over on the right, but our work order is back on track to be scheduled to start in November 16th and November 18th. We originally promised the order on November 20th, and it was originally requested for November 20th, and now we are promising it for November 20th. So our order is back on schedule. So That additional power we have in the timeline helps you kind of understand how your sales orders, your work orders, and your purchase orders all relate, so that you can do things like figure out which project to borrow something from to optimize how you're managing your inventory. Okay, that was like project manufacturing use case. Now, we did a number of other things that are not really Enterprise Command Center related, but just if you were pure functional additions. Again, many of these requested by customers with high priority voting. One of these is support for dual unit of measure in discrete manufacturing. Now, we've always had dual unit of measure in process manufacturing, where you might buy something by the pound and sell it by the unit, or buy it by the units, ship it by the units and sell it by the pound. I mean, those kinds of things are very common, and when you're dealing with foods and other things that don't have uniform weight. What we have had a lot of requests to do is be able to have that kind of capability even in discrete manufacturing. So, for example, you might buy steel cable by the ton, but when you manufacture, you're going to do work orders that are based on demanding it by the foot or by the inch or by the meter or whatever it might be, right? So linear measurement. So there are cases that come up in discrete manufacturing like that, and we now support transacting in both the primary and the dual unit of measure during all of the issue, return, pick, and release, and all the move transactions, everything, and support for that in the mobile supply chain interface as well. Another thing that we added, again, customer request, is what we call clearance instructions. So if you're doing a process manufacturing activity, particularly in a kind of food and beverage setting or in a pharmaceutical setting, something that's got where cleanliness is extremely important, and it may be a regulated requirement, you have rules around what it means to be ready to do the next batch. Things like I have to make sure that the vats and equipment is cleaned. I make sure that the meters and things are calibrated, so that and thermometers and other things are calibrated so they'll sense what's going on correctly. So you need to record various equipment readings and quality metrics, and then get a confirmation to proceed and confirmation you've completed the clearance instructions. So we now support that within process manufacturing MES. And now more broadly around that idea of quality, we have the quality system now integrates with more different things, more different entities within eBusiness Suite. So we have situations where you want to, again, particularly around regulated situations, you might want, if you're in a pharmaceutical setting or in a food setting, your supplier needs to register with you quality, upload into iSupplier portal quality inspection results that they did at the time they shipped you the goods. They're going to ship you an ingredient that you're going to then include in a food or in a medicine, and they need to show what quality results they have. So now we have integration where iSupplier portal can include that information in the quality plan. We've basically added not just being able to integrate it in the plan, but be able to capture electronic signatures. So a lot of these regulated environments require that you actually capture electronic signatures, so that you can kind of validate who it was who signed off, and that the authenticity of the sign off on quality measures as you go through the supply chain. Like the releasing organization basically authenticates that the quality check they've done, it was in fact done, and then can supply to the regulator the fact that those ingredients were certified by the supplier, and they're part of what you eventually made as your project, as your product. There's also the notion of asset quality. We've integrated with assets for asset quality check in and check out. So the idea here is that you might have a situation where before you start using a piece of construction material equipment in road construction or some other oil and gas use or some other kind of use case, you actually perform certain quality checks. You make sure there's enough oil, you make sure that the battery has enough level, you make sure that various things are sort of signed off on before it goes into service, and it may be part of your quality process to make sure that those quality checks are done on the equipment, even as a safety measure, to make sure that the equipment is properly certified before it goes into use on a given day. They're also in healthcare, for example, we have the idea of quality checks where periodically, say every 6 months or a year, you might fully do a quality inspection on the medical gas system in a hospital, for example. I'm going to check all of the oxygen dispensing in the hospital, all the alarms, all the meters, all the gauges, all the tanks, everything. So you can have a parent process, which is to do the whole inspection, and you can have child activities, which are like the individual oxygen tanks or the individual meters. You can perform a quality inspection and aggregate that result and sign off on it. In EAM, a sort of similar case is that sometimes when you're doing maintenance, you want to group the things you're maintaining in different ways. So you may have a standard asset hierarchy you've established, like you have building 100, and inside building 100 are various rooms. So that might be the way that you set up your standard asset hierarchy. But for maintenance purposes, you might want to work with alternate hierarchies. So for example, you might want to maintain everything on floor 1, or you might want to maintain all the electrical equipment. So you can establish these alternate groupings, and then for the alternate grouping, you can see what all the assets are by that grouping. You can see what work orders are open, or create work orders for everything in that group, or see which ones are open and so forth. You can do you can do costs of what the maintenance is in those areas, and if you have failures, you can analyze like what's the mean time but between failure of all the electrical equipment on floor 1 as opposed to floor 6, in case you're trying to get to the root cause of a quality problem. So that is all now supported. You can kind of create your own functional hierarchies to aggregate maintenance activities. So finally, in the maintenance area, we have a very cool feature, which is the ability to use indoor maps. So we have a new integration with the Esri ArcGIS Indoors service, which lets you render layers in a map. And you can use regions on this map to search for assets or work orders or work requests, and that can help you manage your maintenance and visualize what's going on more effectively. In the service area, back in the April release, we introduced a command center, kind of network diagram that helped you understand the details of a service request and actually compare and find service requests that were resolved that are similar to the request you're working on, so you can figure out what they did to resolve the requests before, so you can apply a similar approach to resolve the current service request. So that was April. What we have added now is the ability to search service requests using notes keywords. So if you want to search for things that wouldn't necessarily be in the high level description of the problem, but may be incident to the problem, rattling motor, cracked glass, things like the phrases that might have been used in a problem description, you can actually now search the keywords or using the notes keywords. You can actually search those to actually find the service requests that match those. And then we have a new audit trail for the service request also, so you can see easily the whole history of the service request. Switching gears to the HR area, we have a new cool use of the network diagram, this time kind of not left to right, but top to bottom, to visualize an org chart. And let me show you kind of some things we could do with that. So one of the things you could do, also use of the timeline. So start with the timeline. One of the things that you might want to do is identify a person in your organization. And when you click on the timeline, you can see when this person was hired, when they were promoted, when they changed organizations, and so forth. So you might have somebody in your organization, for example, who just was moved into your organization 2 months ago, who said, "Hey, I'm late for a promotion." And you go, "Well, you've only been in my organization 2 months," but you want to go back and say, "Okay, what is the person's promotion history?" Are they somebody that was getting promoted every year and now they've joined your organization and actually they just missed the promotion that they would normally be expecting in the releasing organization? Now they've been in your organization for some number of months and they're feeling like it's late, but you don't know that unless you go back and look at this history. So of course you could look up all this data like one element at a time in the conventional way, but this way on a timeline lets you view kind of the history, and you can understand where the person's coming from. You know, when were they hired? What are the promotions they've gone through? When did they change organizations? You can quite easily get an idea of whether they're, understand their point of view on what they're telling you and validate that the dates that they're giving you are correct and so forth. Okay, another thing you might want to do in just navigating around among in your organization in HR would be to look for a particular person in the org chart and see the people who report to them. And this could be somebody that reports to you or somebody just in general in the organization, depending on how you want to work the permissions on this. So we're looking up somebody named Barry Erickson. We find that, yeah, that's the one we want. And when we do that, we see that person and the direct reports layer. And you can actually click on one of those direct reports and see their direct reports. So you can see that person and their organization visually, and of course click and get somebody's phone number or whatever you might need just by looking at the details of this person. Now, one of the things that's kind of nice using what we remember from the network diagram is our find similar capability is, let's suppose that Barry's in New York and we want to assign some other people who are based in New York to a project that is going to be done in that location. So we can click on show details for Barry. And we see, yes, Barry's in New York. We see his location. We click on that and we say search within. So now we're going to search within Barry's organization for other people who match the New York location. And now we can see that there's the people who are not grayed out are also in New York. And that would be a way to identify people who could be assigned to a New York-based project or New York-based client, for example. Okay, so that's a quick tour through the functional areas. Let me shift gears now and just talk briefly about some technology updates that we've made. One of the big areas of investment, of course, is and we see a lot of customers doing this, is moving over to our Oracle Compute Infrastructure, OCI, our cloud infrastructure. And so just to remind you, there's really three ideas behind the cloud infrastructure. There's the kind of popular idea about subscribing to computing capacity. There's the next step is kind of unique to Oracle, which is Oracle Database as a Service, including Exadata as a service. Most of our largest customers run on Exadata, and you can't get that in any other cloud. And so if you want to run on Exadata, you have to be in the OCI. And so you want to consume that though as a service. You don't have to be rebuying those hardware pieces with capital expense, every 4 years or so. So that's the database as a service. And then finally, for EBS specifically, we make a lot of investments in how to manage the EBS system more optimally if you are running your EBS on OCI, because we can more completely automate the system management, the lifecycle management activities around that. So those are kind of the three ideas. Within the database as a service area, the key thing is we have now announced certification with the autonomous database, which you've probably heard about. We've certified with the dedicated Exadata infrastructure. Initially we're going to run a limited availability program just to make sure people who first on board into this we are interacting with tightly. And so if you're interested in that, you can send a note to this mail ID that's listed on the slide here. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of activity around automating the provisioning of EBS systems on OCI, the movement of systems complete with all your customizations and everything else to OCI. And once you're on OCI, making efficient lifecycle management activities like cloning and backup and restore and adding a node to a cluster and all those kind of things. That is manifest through a capability we call Cloud Manager. And during 2022, we've done several Cloud Manager releases, and they're listed here. I won't go through the details of what we did in each of those, but the latest one is where we actually added the support for doing some of these maintenance activities in the autonomous database context that I described earlier. So the last point I'll make is just one that is an important certification question that's come up a lot in the last 6 months, which is that Microsoft Office 365 Exchange requires a later authentication protocol for IMAP connections. So our workflow mailer has now certified with that later standard. So whether you're on any of the 12.2.12 releases, or even if you're still using our market-driven supported on the 12.1.3 release, you have to be using this authentication standard to interact with Microsoft Exchange, and we now support that. So additional resources, this is just where can you go to get more information. So of course, oracle.com/EBS is our website with all our announcements and kind of links to everything you'd need, sort of your root starting point. Of course, the learning subscription here is what you're watching currently. In addition to that, we have the Oracle, the eBusiness Suite Learning Center, which is oracle.com/EBS-learn. And that's where our TOI material, our transfer of information material is, where you can get tutorials on the details of how to use these features and particularly how to set them up. So this is really targeted at people who are really going to be implementing a feature, need to understand its behavior and its setups in detail. This is a super important resource. Even though there seems to be a lot of content I've covered today, we kind of scratched the surface. There's a lot more that we've done. And where do you find out about that? The source of truth for that is our release content documents. And we have those in a large number of areas. And this slide gives you direct links to all those different functional areas. And there, let's say if you're on 12.2.8, you could look at what did we add in that particular area, like in order management, let's say or in procurement for 12.2.9, 12.2.10, 12.2.11, 12.2.12. And if you're trying to decide whether or not, for example, we might have added a feature that allows you to retire a customization, that would be how you do it. You'd systematically examine that release content document, looking for the particular features and then asking whether they allow you to, retire or refactor customizations. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you for your attention. We look forward to helping you be successful with eBusiness Suite with 12.2.12 and into the future. So thanks for listening.